Today we're talking Into the Breach pilots. Now there is some spoilers in this one that I don't want to give away for you. If you do not know or don't want to know or want to find out for yourself who those pilots you can unlock are, I wouldn't recommend watching this one because they will be popping up on the screen and I don't want to give anything away for you. But if you are interested in learning how to use which pilots and whatnot, please do stick around. We'll get right into it. So if you're a fan of subset games and you've played FTL, the three pilots on the right, the ones you can unlock, will look very familiar to you. You know, we've got Kazak, our obvious Mantis, we've got our rock pilot, Eridan, and we've got our Zoltan Mafan. Three amazing pilots in their own rights, especially Kazak and Mafan for very specific uses, but we're going to mostly cover these standard pilots first. You start off with Ralph. His bonus is being able to get more XP per kill. This seems very attractive, but you're rolling a lot of RNG, just getting him leveled up quickly enough. And I would say once you unlock other pilots, it's probably best to move along from Ralph. He served his time getting you introduced to the game quickly enough, but I wouldn't really stick with him unless you really, for whatever reason, like the upgrades he's got and want to keep using him. The first pilot that I ever really used effectively was Camilla. She is unaffected by webbing and smoke. Her mech can then attack when standing inside of smoke or will not be able to be webbed by web enemies. If you're using, say, the Rusting Hulks that drop smoke all over the place, I'd highly recommend Camilla. She is very effective in being able to not have to worry about where she's standing in order to actually do that attacking. Lily is very nice if you need to have someone who you can get into position really quickly. So let's say on one of your additional pole mechs or maybe one of your rocket or boulder mech, Lily can be nice to drop in there as well as a nice change of pace. I don't use Lily as much as Camilla, but she is definitely there. Bethany starts every mission with a shield. If you do not have Mafan, Bethany is obviously your go-to pilot for the ice mechs. For that frost cannon mech. Not really one that I would necessarily think in any other place, but great to have if you want to make sure you're using that ice projectile like I showed you last time when we were covering the actual squads themselves. Henry can move through enemy units. This is actually a very nice pilot for getting through in those tight places. I don't use Henry very often because I prioritize some of the other pieces, but it's very nice to be able to have someone who's not flying who can walk right through and get around an enemy. Isaac, very interesting lore about Isaac and his stuttering. I won't tell everything here, but you can certainly look it up. He has the ability to do one extra reset every battle. So if you find yourself always making mistakes and wanting to start over, definitely use Isaac. I think as you progress in the game, you'll be using Isaac less and less. I'm going to save these four pilots for later. I'm going to hop down here to Harold. Harold is very nice to have. Basically, if you think of what you've got, someone who where you need to have an additional attack or additional ability on one of your pilots who might be relatively weak, Harold, when he does his repair, also pushes enemies away. Now, a little bit word of warning, you have to remember that you have Harold in there because you can get used to moving somewhere and repairing and used to not pushing, and you can actually do more damage if you're doing that last. You go and move someplace and you move someone someplace you don't want to move them to. So this is sort of a blessing and a curse, which is actually the reason why I don't use Harold, because I don't have that type of an attention span. Chen is very nice to pick up midway through an actual battle because she's able to attack and then move out of the way. If you think of something like a swap mech to be able to swap and then move one additional space, is a nice thing to have. I feel like there are other pilots that I would prioritize from a starting pilot perspective, but Chen is very nice, and you know, like any pilot could then level up and you never know what can happen. Abe is one of my most used pilots. Absolutely, like I talked about, if I'm using my hazardous mechs, I'm going to drop Abe into that leap mech. Also, I'm using Zenith, I'm going to probably drop Abe into that charge mech to give me more armor and reduce that damage to myself when I'm doing attacking. Very, very capable pilot, probably one of my most used if you count her and Camilla, at least of these standard 9 here in the middle. Now, these 4 off to the left require power to get their special abilities. The nice thing is, they have some really nice abilities. The problem is that you have to power them up, so you do not have them early game. It's more of a later stage game type of a thing. Let's go through them one by one here. Ghana, you can deploy in them anywhere on the map, which will drop down and do 1 damage to adjacent enemies. This is a really nice feature to have for easy or even for normal games where you do not have nearly as many alphas popping up. If you're going into the hard game mode though, Ghana is kind of not one that's going to do much damage and make much of a difference. There are certainly better pilot choices. Archimedes, you can move after shooting. This is sort of like taking Chen to the extreme. Requires a core for it, but if you're going for 4 island and you're thinking you want to go with Chen, go with Archimedes instead. You're going to be very happy you did, as you can move all the way across the board after you attack and block Vex spawning, controlling those Vex on the board. Very, very nice to have. Prospero gains flying. It's nice to be able to put flying on a mech otherwise wouldn't have it, so you can stand over a cliff or in water and not be affected by that. Highly recommended. Now you will obviously still be affected by fire, so it's not like you're not taking fire damage. However, you are able to fly over water, cataclysms, lava, etc. Silica. Absolutely must have Silica if you are doing Blitzkrieg. I mentioned this when we talked about the actual squads last time, but the ability to the Blitzkrieg's lightning mech only does 2 damage until you upgrade it. Silica, even though she requires 2 additional power, can act twice if they don't move. So imagine having building chain, additional damage, and Silica. You can basically camp by a set of buildings, chain through the whole map, and basically clear everything, even your own pilots, word of warning. So Silica is very nice. Often when I use Silica, I actually remove the pilots from the other mechs and sell them off for additional reputation at the end of the first island, because they're gonna die at some point anyways. I'd much rather have the reputation and just let the AIs take over. Okay. The last 3, these are the secret pilots. Kazak, 2 damage melee attack replaces repair. So when you hit repair, instead you'll be able to do a 2 damage push attack. This can turn many of those lower classed mechs into very usable mechs. The next one, Aradni, are rock, plus 3 health and immune to fire. You know what? This is really personal choice. I don't use them very much, but having that additional health and complete fire resistance. Obviously don't use them on the Flame Behemoths because that's a little bit redundant, but otherwise, you know what? Go for it. It's definitely a good choice. I don't think the best, but that 3 health can sometimes legitimately save a life. Mafan, absolutely one of my favorites. Once you unlock Mafan, you don't need to use Bethany anymore. He has an additional reactor core, which means you can, if you're using, say, that ice mech with that frost cannon, get him additional movement right away. He doesn't have to worry about HP because he gets a shield every turn. If that shield gets destroyed at the beginning of the turn, he reforms it, meaning he can fire the frost cannon without any consequence. But unlike Bethany, you can put Mafan right on top of Vex spawning. He'll block Vex spawning, his shield will go away, but he'll form it right back up again. Really, really, really awesome pilot. This is actually my favorite pilot in the game, especially if I'm using the ice mechs. So my top 4, in case you are curious, you probably could stitch this together. Mafan, Kazak, Camilla, and Abe are my Fantastic 4. So that's all of the pilots, guys. Real quick run through. I hope that gives you a better example of who to go after, who to prioritize, and how to use these different pilots. Showing you what I like. Obviously, do your own thing. If you have other ideas on different ways you like to use pilots, please go ahead and drop them in the comments. As always, I can say you can catch me on Twitch streaming there. The link is below in the description as well, but I will see you guys later. We're going to be doing information about some of the weapons that you can see and how to prioritize those. And finally, as I've been talking about this whole time, get into speedrunning a couple episodes from now, how to speedrun Into the Breach. So hope you guys have a great time. Hope you've enjoyed it. Have a great day. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.